Compassion in peaceful suffering. Well, first of all, here's what's really interesting about compassion compared to sympathy or pity. Sympathy and pity tend to be very temporary emotional states that we go through for another being. Oh my God, that's horrible. Oh my God, I can't believe that happened, you poor thing. Compassion actually connects us. Compassion unites us. Compassion opens my heart so wide that you're now inside. And it embraces this union of both of us. But now here's what's interesting about that. As I'm able to be present with you in compassion, because as all of us know, I mean, is there anyone in this room who hasn't ever suffered? Well, before I made a sweeping generalization, I just wanted to make sure that it was an appropriate sweeping generalization. So we've all suffered. Now, when you're suffering, what do you want? Anybody want somebody to tell them what to do? Anybody want somebody to come up with the answers of how they're going to fix it? And yet, ironically, that's what we tend to do for other people. And we do it, again, out of our best intentions. You're suffering. My instinct is, let me fix this for you. And of course, A, it never works. B, it never even helps. And all it tends to do even more is drive wedges between us. Because now, I don't even want you in my space because I don't want to be told how to fix it. Clearly, since I'm the one suffering, I've run through every possible option in my brain 2,000 times. And should there be any available options to me, for whatever reason, in this moment, I'm not ready to take them. And really what I need is just your presence. Now, presence does not require misery. So I don't have to be miserable with you. I just have to be present with you. And in that presence is an openness to that person to go as far as they need to go in their misery, that their misery doesn't scare you. See, when we try to fix people, or tell them it's all going to be okay, or don't worry, really what that means is, I'm so uncomfortable with your sadness that I need us as a collective to get out of this quickly. So let's start talking solutions. And really what people need is us to just fearlessly be able to be present with them in their misery, in their pain. And that's not easy by any means. But when we ask ourselves what we can do for people who are suffering, that's what we can do. Because I know for myself, for others I've talked to, that when I'm suffering, what you want is just someone who isn't scared by your suffering. Someone who's able to sit there and be present, physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. Who doesn't need to tell me not to worry about it. But I have no need to make that person miserable. There's no sense in my misery that I need you also to be miserable. I want you to be present. But you don't need to be miserable. And then here's the last piece of that, is your presence in compassion, in a state of connection, actually holds not only their pain, but it holds the truth of the existence of joy. which, when we are in pain, is a truth that is very, very, very difficult for us to conceive of. It's not something I want to hear you say. I don't want you to tell me there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, or this too shall pass, or that I should just think about the happy times. You know, I don't want it like that. But in your presence that holds the presence of joy, it allows me to remember, without you shoving it down my throat, that there is also another truth. And this, for me, is so deeply and beautifully portrayed here on the banks of Ganga. We do arati sitting on these steps. You look across Ganga, and if you look a little bit downriver, if you're facing Ganga, say at about 11 p.m., if it were a clock, is where the Rishikesh cremation grounds are. And the first night I noticed that a cremation was going on, I had this, as we were singing and chanting ecstatically and clapping and dancing, I had this moment of, oh my God. And my heart went out to the people on the other side, thinking how they must be feeling to be standing over the burning body of a loved one and having to listen to these people have the audacity to sing and celebrate. Because for so many of us, particularly those of us from the West, there's this sense of the world should stop, like how dare the sun even rise, because we've so well compartmentalized mourning from joy, life from death. And then I realized, but in India that isn't true. They absolutely don't feel like that. There is absolutely no sense. In fact, we have so many people come here to actually do final rites of a loved one, who time it in such a way that they'll get here early enough in the day to be able to do the final rites, still have a bath in Ganga, and join us for the evening arati. Those dividing lines that we have abroad, they really don't exist here. There isn't that sense of a place for mourning versus a place for celebration, a time for mourning, a time for celebration. And if you look out over Ganga, and it's just so meditatively beautiful, you realize that the flames from the fire of their cremation seem very separate from us, with this big river between us. But if you go a few feet in the air, you realize that the flames from their cremation mingle with the flames from our arati in such a way that just a few feet above that water, you can't even tease them apart. And I think that that's actually one of the main reasons that people in this culture are just so much healthier, I think, with regard to the presence of death, the way that it's interwoven with life, because it is interwoven. And yeah, here we're celebrating and here we're mourning. And I mention it with regard to this issue of an aspect of compassion, because in order for us to be present with the people who are mourning, we don't have to stop singing. We just have to acknowledge them and take them into our prayers. And that really is the deepest level of compassion. And you should never feel guilty for being happy. Because as we all know, when we're not in a moment of pain, there's always something to be happy about. And just because a loved one is having a difficult time finding that, doesn't mean that you should feel guilty for finding that. And anyone who makes you feel guilty for not being miserable with them, or makes you feel guilty for having the audacity to still be able to smile while they're in pain, is someone who's having a lot of difficulty processing aspects of their own pain. Doesn't make it your responsibility to, take them through it, but it gives you a window into the idea that what they're going through is not just the pure mourning or the pure loss, but is actually more of a mixed bag. And that's okay. And you can help them, hold their hands and be present with them through that as well. But that doesn't mean that you have to get also brought into that. Because when you're connected deeply with someone, when you sit with them, you're able to feel their pain anyway. You're not telling jokes anyway. You're not giggling anyway. And the fact that you are still able to access joy in your life should be a gift to them, as a light of another truth.